So we're going to talk about changes to the flight balance today. I tried to avoid saying flight model because the flight model fundamentally is still the same as it was. It's still the same simulated system that John Pritchett and Chris really want in there. This is more iteration on how the values we put in and get out have changed, that changed the way you fly, not the fundamentals of flying. We've had some feedback from the community on what they've heard about the changes, what some of the Evocati have tested. We had some ideas that what we thought people would like, what they wouldn't like, so we were looking to do some more changes, and the community feedback just sort of solidified that. So we're going to talk about what's changed from a month ago when you were talking last time on Aroundiverse.
The first thing we were doing, obviously everyone will know about, is the SEM speed change, where we kind of halved those speeds from what they were to try and increase the closeness of combat and make it feel a bit more engaging in that sense. And it just had to be addressed in some way. And that, I guess, leads us to demonstrate how cruise is no more, and how we've adapted Afterburner to fill that gap, to reach those speeds. Here we go. This is me now using Afterburner. And as you can see, I'm hitting cruise speeds here, and I'm just holding the shift key to get there. And then when I release, the current plan is once you Afterburner, you will stay at the velocity you've hit once you release the key, and you'll stay in what we're terming like an Afterburner active or Afterburner primed mode, where you'll continue at this velocity. Your afterburner or hydrogen fuel will start creeping down slowly, but you've used a lot of it to burn up to this velocity in the first place, and have gone out of bounds.
Whilst we have reduced the SEM speeds, the afterburn speeds push you back up there, but the fuel consumption has had a complete overhaul, so you can maintain those faster speeds for longer.
You'll be able to maintain it at that velocity and use less fuel, like pretty much as we show here. But there will be a higher burn cost for getting up to that velocity. I just want to point that out. There will be the penalty of using Afterburner quickly. You have to wait a little bit, but if you're using it to get over great distances, you're burning up fast, you'll then truck on as you are, consuming very little. But it's those moments where you have to quickly engage it in a combat situation that might cost you in terms of fuel use. But if people are familiar with how Boost works, it's essentially shortening acceleration times on all of your directional vectors so that you can maneuver a lot faster, and that's what Boost's been used to. If you're sliding off course, you hit the boost key and you get back on course much quicker than you would have done, but at the cost of the fuel, so you lose a penalty to that. Once you trigger the afterburner, you become a lot less maneuverable, much like you do in cruise, as I'm demonstrating here. This is me at full afterburn. I've got the restricted maneuvering. This is entirely based on where your throttle is once you enter the mode. So the lower the throttle is, the more maneuverable you are whilst afterburning. I suppose trying to change your course quickly, you decouple, you spin round, you hit afterburner to get those main engines to change direction as quickly as possible. So you can see by that. If you want an afterburner in 2.6, you just press shift and hold it, and that's all you need to do. There's no tap and hold anymore.
It's the same key that it was on other input devices like PAD, HOTAS.
We've just moved Boost away from that key. Yeah, so Boost now being on X, it means you can afterburner and Boost at the same time, which opens up another level of complexity to the gameplay.
Using the phrase turbo like we did before, it overpowers, overthrusts all your secondary thrusters, I think is the correct term for it. So that's all your maneuvering thrusters, your retro thrusters, not your main thrusters. So it gives you increased thrust output to all those ones. So when you're boosting, you can arrest your slides quicker, you can stop quicker. So you can combine that now with Afterburner to do a bit of both, or use it independently. So Afterburn in, let go of the Afterburner, hit boost, do a tight turn, something that's going to be really useful for racing. Yeah, so racing, everyone was super worried that SEM speeds were cut in half. They thought it was going to be super slow. And it's not, because you've got all these new ways of boosting. So, for example, as Andy tries to fly whilst I'm talking him through it, you can use the afterburn down the straighter sections, and obviously you can modulate that with your throttle to sort of decide how much afterburn speed you want. You can absolutely bomb it down the straights and then back off, hit boost, put all the power to his manoeuvring and retro thrusters to do tight turns. We've been doing a lot of testing of this with QA and the designers here, and we're getting pretty good times. We're by no means the fantastic racers, but we're getting some pretty comparative times to some of the fastest ever ones that have been set on the leaderboards. So I'm sure in the hands of the backers that we're going to have some pretty good new records.
This really creates this balance of afterburn and boost at the same time. I mean, you're switching between one, the other, or both at the same time to try and get the fastest laps. When it comes to a straight line, I'm afterburning. I'm trying to line my ship up as straight as possible, hit the afterburner for the main engine boost and speed increase. Obviously, it restricts your maneuverability as well whilst you're afterburning at full throttle. You have to be careful of that.
That's another thing that's changed. Like, a lot of racing at the moment is simply throttle to 100%, and away you go. With this, actually managing your throttle can give some quite big improvements to it. The M50 handles quite differently to the 350R, not just a case of linear acceleration or turning speed now. A lot of the ships have favourable axes, so they can turn better when they're angled one way versus another. So how you do a really fast lap in an M50 is not going to be how you do that fast lap in a 350R. You're going to have to learn how your ship works, what's the strongest axis of thrust on your ships, and sort of customise that.
I think it's a lot of fun now with these changes, especially when you hit the afterburn. It kind of locks you into a straight line into the wall. Yeah, good fun.
And it also changes dogfighting as well. Those SCM speeds have brought in the combat massively. And another thing that we haven't really talked about is all the weapons have had a complete rebalance as well. We've gone and actually ground up across the board. All the ships have had their tuning changed, all the weapons have had their tuning changed, the shields have had their tuning changed, the health points of the ships have had the values changed. So it's really sort of not a clean slate, because we had, for a lot of the ships, we knew where we wanted them to be, and they were getting there, but it was sort of piecemeal. Every now and then we'd tweak one and we're like, oh, that's fine, but it was out of whack with the others. So now they've all had the same pass together, so it's more comparative of the game as a whole, where everything's going to sit. We'll talk a bit about how these changes affect combat. So we're in Dying Star Vandal Swarm now, in a Sabre Comet. So Andy's using the new afterburn to really close the distance quickly, a bit too quickly. No, he's done it. And then you use presumably the boost there to stop yourself, get right on the tail of this scythe, and then hopefully do some damage. As you can see, everything sort of much closer, in your face. Looks much more dramatic than it was or is in 2.5, where everything's always so far away, everyone's flying really fast, and that's one of the things we really wanted to tackle with this, was to get the combat in close, in your face.
Yeah, you still got the advanced skill of a pilot can use afterburner to their advantage. They still have it, as much fuel as they've got, they can use it to their advantage and still combat at high speed if they're good enough to do it around tight spaces and around these asteroid belts, for example.
Those who want to push themselves with advanced tactics, skills and mechanics can still do that, and they've got new challenges to learn. We've also got the missile camera as well, which is in there.
Oh yeah, let's do that. All right, let's pick our victim. There we go. Still going though.
Yeah, still going. Works really nicely with the some of the bigger torpedoes that we have in the game, like on the Retaliator. It's just seeing these torpedoes go for 10 kilometers into something so that's the new flight model changes that we're working on. Still lots of iterations to go. Got a lot of certainly UI elements to help improve there. Hopefully that clears up some concerns that people had, makes people happy. That's all from us. Thanks. Bye.